everybody. Mike Beer here with your Friday DRF race of the day. Gulfstream Park, race number 8 is the race of the day for Friday, December 9th. Full field here of Florida-bred fillies and mares. Going to go 1 mile on the turf course down there. It's a non-winner one for the Florida-breds. Optional $20,000 claiming tags. Full gate of 12 horses out. Let's take a look at the field right now. 2 on the also eligible list as well, hoping for a scratch to get into this race. Big, wide open field. I think, sort of one of those races that you kind of feel like you can make cases for several different horses. And as you can see from the morning line there, it's kind of a wide open race. The number 2 State Crown is a 3-1 favorite on the morning line down there. Several other horses within range of that. I do think State Crown is probably the right horse to make the morning line favorite at least. She's run a couple of figures on the turf in her career that, fairly stand out in this field. And it feels like if she can show up here and run her good race, she's supposed to be really tough. She also has plenty of tactical speed from an inside draw. Jose Ortiz regaining the mount on this filly. So it feels like there's plenty to like about her. There are questions, at least a couple of questions surrounding her, but I do feel like if she shows up and runs her really good race, she's going to be tough in here. But, like I said at the open, I feel like there are a lot of different horses that you sort of at least want to keep an eye on here, see what kind of prices they go off at, and maybe take a little bit of shot in this race, because not only does it feel like several different horses could win, but it also feels like it could just set up for a lot of different kinds of running styles. We'll take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector. You see the red bar on the Pace Projector there, which suggests that they think it's going to be run at a fast pace. I think that's certainly possible. The horses that they have going forward, the 4 Bravo Zulu is certainly a horse who has speed. The 5 Crystal Coast didn't show speed in her most recent start, but had been showing speed prior to that, so she could easily go in this race. The number 8 Oglala, another horse who could go forward. They're not the only ones, though. It feels like there are a couple of other horses in here who could also show some speed. But then again, even those horses that they have, sort of up front on the Pace Projector, it's not like they have to go in their races. Bravo Zulu does feel like a horse who wants to be, sort of on or near the early lead. So I think she is going to come out of there running. Some of the other horses, they'll feel like they're adaptable to different kinds of pace scenarios. So we'll see how the pace plays out. Could be fast. If nothing else, I think it should be a fairly run race. Let's start to get to the contenders here. We'll start off with the horse down on the rail. Britiz is the number 1. She's 20-1. On the morning line for this race. And she's just a horse who I feel like is coming off of a most recent start, which came off of a 6-month layoff on the synthetic surface here at Gulfstream Park, and they just used her speed that day. She isn't a filly who it feels like they have to ride her that way. I feel like that was more of a case, perhaps, of just sort of getting a tightener into her off the long left. So they let her come running out of there. She cleared to the lead, but she took pressure basically all the way around the track in that race. Did some dueling into the stretch and then got tired at the end. You sort of feel like maybe that was a little bit by design on the all-weather surface. This is a filly who's only made 1 turf start so far in her career, and that was a winning effort back in May, right before the layoff. We'll take a look at the replay of that race right now, and it's just at least worth noting. You're going to see this filly just sort of come down the outside in this race to challenge at the top of the stretch. She's going to sort of start to prevail in the final furlong, and then she'll hold on at the end of the race. It was certainly a good effort. I don't think it was a great effort by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a good effort. And it's also at least worth pointing out that, before we picked that replay up, she was just in a perfect trip all the way around the track. But she's very lightly raced. She's only run once on turf, and it was a winning effort, and she's got a great post on the inside. So it just sort of feels like there's a good trip coming for this horse at 20-1 on the morning line. State Crown is the number 2. She is your morning line favorite in this race for trainer Mike Maker. And she's just a horse who, again, as I said in the open, it feels like if she shows up and runs her really good race, she's just supposed to be really tough in here. She's got plenty of tactical speed, and she's run some figures. She's run on turf actually pretty sparingly in a 14-race career so far. Only 6 starts on the grass and 1 win. But that win was a really good performance to break her maiden, to win an allowance race rather at Delaware. She came back at Saratoga in a race off of that win, which was way too tough and probably too far for her as well. The most recent turf start for State Crown. Not sure what the plan there was from Kendrick Carmouche, but he just took this filly back, took a hold of her right from the gate, took her back to last, and the way that race was run at a slow pace, she just had no chance in there. Actually didn't run poorly at all, and she's not a horse who has to be ridden that way. She's got plenty of tactical speed, so I'm not sure what that was all about. I would give her a pass for that race. Maker claimed her out of that race for $32,000. The first start for Maker was in a stakes race at Delaware. They got rained off the turf. I think you want to give her a pass for that race. She has not been seen since then. I guess the big question mark staring the face with State Crown is this is her second start off the claim. It's been a couple of months since that race came off the turf, and Maker's dropping her in for 20. So I guess that's not a particularly good sign. I still feel like if she runs her good race, she's going to be really tough in this race. The 3 is Miles of Smiles, one of the few horses in here who is making her turf debut in this race. Her overall form is fine. It's mostly on the main track, mostly on dirt, and she's run a couple of figures on that surface, which I guess if she transfers them over would make her tough in this race. She's also 20-1 on the line. Not my kind of horse, but I guess if you found something that you liked about her, you could certainly take a shot here. It does feel like she's improved in her most recent races, the last 2 with blinkers on. Bravo Zulu, we sort of talked about in the open. I think if you just look at her just on paper, she looks like a contender in this race. She has speed figures that put her in the mix. She's got speed. I think she is going to come out of there running and try to make the lead in this race. Her 4 most recent starts through the summer all came in New Jersey, and she faced good fields in those races. Just wasn't good enough. Made the lead every single time. Just wasn't good enough to beat horses like Finest Work, Miss Bonnie T. So I guess you could just say she did the best that she could do in those races, and those races are just too tough for her. The only thing that I didn't really like about her, I guess, is twofold. The 2 wins in her career are just races where she got absolutely loose on paces that weren't fast, and I don't feel like that's going to be the case in here. And the one time that she didn't make the lead, the last time that they ran her in this condition, in fact, she was outrun to the front by a horse who's also back in this race, and I just didn't think Bravo Zulu ran well at all that day. We'll see if she can do better in this race. I guess she's not impossible, but I didn't like her. The number 5 is Crystal Coast. This horse is pretty interesting in this race. She is exiting, another horse exiting a race on the all-weather surface in this condition down here at Gulfstream Park. And personally, I thought she ran really, really well in here. She was a big price in this race. We're going to look at the stretch run right now. She just had one of those trips, and this is a filly who has plenty of speed, but early on in this race, she just sort of got shuffled back in and among horses and lost position. And then her rider just decided to sort of stay towards the inside in there. And as you see in the upper stretch there, she just couldn't really find a way to get clear as the winner was rallying down the outside with a clean run. Once this filly was able to alter course late and get out into the clear, she comes with a really good finish and starts making up ground again. She just can't quite get up. I thought she ran really well in that race. There were a couple of other fillies who were also in that field who are back in this spot. And I would kind of prefer Crystal Coast of those horses. I know that race we just watched was on a different surface, but this filly's run fine at times on the grass, and she's got plenty of tactical speed, so I think she'll be forwardly placed in this race. The one concern that I have with her, the one reason I don't like her as much as I wanted to, is I would want a good price on her if I was going to bet her. And she's 9-2 on the morning line, which doesn't do a lot for me. And with Louis Saez taking them out, I guess she could take that kind of money in here. I don't want a short price on her, but I'm going to keep an eye on it and see if she drifts up to a much better price in this race. Because if she does, I'll use her. Looking like a queen. Is the number 6 in this race. All of her most recent races have either come, there's a dirt start in there, but they're mostly on the all-weather surface here at Gulfstream Park. And if you look at her overall record, that's not her surface. Dirt is not her surface. Turf is her surface. She's won 7 times on the grass. The most recent turf start for this filly came all the way back in mid-May in this condition, over this distance, on this turf course. Here's the replay of that race right now. She just went right to the start. This is the race I was talking about before that Bravo Zulu was also in. This filly outran Bravo Zulu to the early lead and just took command of this field. And her rider, to his credit, just did not get in her way, just let her roll along up the backstretch. You see through the stretch there, she just goes on with it. She was never threatened in here. A much the best victory with a 78 buyer. She has not been on turf since then. I get that was a front-running win, and this pace could be faster. But she's a horse who, and just about every one of her other wins on the grass, was not on the lead. She doesn't need to be out there making the running in order to be effective. And I just couldn't look at her any other way than as a major contender in this race, getting back to the surface she wants to be on. She's 12-1 on the morning line, and if that line even comes close to holding, I'll be using Looking Like a Queen. The number 7, Little Belita, I just thought she was impossible to make a case for. She's 30-1 on the morning line. The number 8 is Oglala, very lightly raced 4-year-old for a really good trainer in Ralph Nix. Ran well. Turf debut, came in her second career start way back last April as a 3-year-old. She ran fine in that race and then only managed one other start. Missed nearly a year after that. And when she came back off the layoff, here in April, going a mile and a 16th in an open maiden special weight. She came away victorious in that race with a 73 buyer. I thought she got a really, really good trip in that race. But she also, made the run at the time that she needed to make it. Managed to fight her way to the lead in there and just kept clear to the end. I didn't love the way she finished that race off, but she kept clear to the finish. She got the job done. It was, again, first start off of a really long layoff, and she's another one who just hasn't been back on turf since then, but her 2 races on the all-weather over the summer were fine. You're getting her off another little 5-month or so layoff here, so that could be a concern. But it feels like she's fairly priced on the morning line. She's very lightly raced, could easily take a step forward here, has tactical speed, all good things. I'm not going to be surprised when she's competitive in here. The 9 is Speed Salsa. Plenty of starts for this 5-year-old mare. A lot of sprints. They move her back and forth between sprinting and routing. And she's one of those horses she looks like a closing sprinter in a lot of ways on paper. Generally speaking, those are horses you sort of like to stay away from when they go long, but it doesn't seem to be the case with this mare. It feels like she can do either one, and she does them equally well. In her most recent start at the Meadowlands, came off of 3 straight sprints where she ran fine. They stretched her out last time, and she just ran really well in that race. I didn't send the replay, and it's a 3-life claimer, but she was off the pace, but never really outrun. Always traveled in there. Came with a big finish through the stretch and just ran right over the top of that field to win very, very convincingly with a 71 buyer. Just to give you an idea of how ridiculous this game can be sometimes, last October, they did a similar thing with her, a couple of sprints, and then they stretched her out at the Meadowlands in an entry-level allowance race, and she actually went favored that day over a horse named Bleecker Street, who went on to become a multiple graded stakes winner later. This filly ran well in that race in her own right, actually put in a big run through the stretch, but Bleecker Street was the winner. I feel like this is a perfectly fine spot for her. I know it was a restricted claimer last time, but she can get this distance effectively. There could be pace for her to run at in this race, and I just think she makes a lot of sense from a lot of different directions. We'll see what kind of price she is. I think that 5-1 morning line is probably fair. Kosea is the number 10. She's also out of that Crystal Coast race on the all-weather that we looked at earlier. And she ran fine in there with a 74 buyer speed figure, which is her career top. It was her second start off the claim, too. So I guess you could look at her and feel like that Bob DeBone has really improved this filly. I think that's certainly possible. I don't love her only turf races that she shows on her page right now. Maybe she's just a better horse now, so you shouldn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But I just wonder if she's not just better on the all-weather surface. I would also just point out about that last race, and she did run well. You'll see the short comment, 5-wide trip, and then she just gets beat less than a length in there. I think that's kind of true. She was at least 4 or 5 wide all the way around the track in there. I just want to say that I don't want to give her too much credit for that, because the horse that won the race, who was twice the price that Kosea was in that race, the horse that won it was even wider than this horse was on the first turn, and still made the first run in that race, and then still won. So I don't know how much credit to give this horse really for being wide in that race, but she still ran well. The number 11 is rough enough. Big price on the morning line. Don't see the race that makes her competitive. Tamarindo is the 12 and will complete this field if there are no scratches. And I just think she's a horse you have to take seriously. Obviously, you worry about the far outside draw in here. Her career debut and the only time that she ran on turf was way back in June. And it's a race where I thought she actually ran fine. Only a 56 buyer, finishing 5th. But if you go back and watch the replay, sort of bumped and squeezed between horses at the start of that race. Then she clipped heels after that, and she just wound up last. And her rider, I feel like, just sort of gave her a chance to settle, took her to the outside in the stretch, and just let her run on. And she passed a bunch of horses. It was actually a pretty useful debut, I thought, with some trouble. And then after that, it's been all races on the synthetic surface. The second career start, I thought that was a race where she hung. She actually had dead aim in that race, and I thought she probably should have won, and she wound up hanging at the end. But since then, I feel like maybe she's taken some steps forward. I don't think she wanted to be on the lead 3 starts back. She won very convincingly to break her maiden 2 starts back, and we'll take a look at the replay of that race right now, because this is a race where you'll see she only wins it by 3/4 of a length, but I think you can tell here as you watch the stretch run that she's just very confidently ridden here, and she wins it under strong handling. The margin of victory is not big, but she wins the race really, really easily. She came out of that race to run in a stakes race, again on the all-weather at a big price, and got tired through the stretch. I don't care about that one. She's got turf pedigree. The only time she ran on turf is a way better effort than it may look on paper. She's very lightly raced. She just needs a trip from the outside post. I think this is the kind of race that she could certainly win. I'll wait and see what kind of price she is too, because I could certainly see her taking money in here. The 13 and the 14 are both also eligible, needing scratches to get in, and I think it's pretty clear from looking at the form that if the 13 Fish Mooney gets in, even with the far outside post, she's a horse that you want to consider in this race for sure, and I'll use her if she gets in, but I'll wait and see if that happens. Here's the picks. I could have gone a couple of different directions in this race. I do think State Crown, the 2, is probably the horse to beat. I'm going to take a shot against her with the number 9, Speed Salsa. Really liked her last race. Think she's going to get a setup in here. The distance to me is no problem for her. I just feel like she might be a little underrated. She shows a bunch of claiming lines, so maybe that will allow her price to stay up about where it needs to be here. I went 9, 2, 6, and 12 in your Friday race of the day, the 8th at Gulfstream Park. It's a pretty good one. It feels like it's kind of wide open. Approximate post time, 3:35 Eastern time. Good luck.